We are bidding the boilers as what we're calling bid package 3. It's strictly an equipment bid, and that's bid package 3. Those bids are also going to be due March 24th, same day as bid package 1. That way the boilers can be ordered, they will come and they will be considered owner equipment. So when bid package 2 goes out, which bid package 2 will contain all of the HVAC, plumbing, electrical, all of that, the first job that goes with bid package 2 will be to demolish the current boilers, install the new boilers. So that will all happen this summer, so we have heat in our buildings by November, hopefully, that's the plan, but we're saying October. So a little confusing there, so we're doing, bid package 1 comes in on the 24th, bid package 3 comes in on the 24th. So precast walls and then boilers, that's the two big items with those two.
And I'll just add that we pushed for that because of the fact of, you know, that's a whole other year of putting dollars into really old boilers. And so thankfully the construction company and our architect helped us out get that because.
And the engineers, and they agreed, they, you know, I said.
It just made no sense for us to say, hey, another.
Saves the district some dollars, big dollars in repair maintenance on boilers that we currently have because of their age. So bid package 2 then will go out in April. We don't have a definite date on that. They're still finalizing that. So bid package 2 is basically everything else. All the construction, the plumbing, the electrical, everything else will go out with bid package 2. So architects were here last Wednesday and we did the final meeting with technology. So we went room by room to make sure we had all the data drops that we need, the wireless access points, the electrical, covered all that. We had about a 3-hour meeting and just kind of room by room to make sure we had all the drops where we need it, because now is the time to make sure you have the drops where you need them for all the data connections and that type of thing. So things are moving along on the project. So questions that you have on bid packages and the advertising, if you've seen it, go out.
So what's the biggest bid? We talk 1, 2, 3. Where's the boatload of those dollars going bid package 2?
Bid package 2, yep.
What boiler heats the field house?
They run on their own separate system. So we're looking at, they run on roof unit, top units.
So that will continue?
That will
as
continue as it is right now with they're looking at, if at some time those rooftop units fail, that we have to start looking at repairing them, they're making it so it can be connected to the new construction.
Via Lincoln or via the next floor?
They weren't sure yet which way they were gonna go. Yep. And it still might be the best option for that building to replace a rooftop unit. Right now, they're running fine, we don't have any issues.
So if they would have to, whether they went with the high school boilers or the Lincoln, there'd be more than enough boiler horsepower to.
Correct, yep, yep. And they worked really closely with Brady, with facilities, not just Brady, but basically Ron and Mike. The engineer was, you know, we sat down, Chris and I were down there for a meeting, but then he emailed all the specs to Brady and his guys so they could review what kind of boiler, what kind of burner, everything. So it was in line with what the guys wanted. And then they consulted with who we have work on our boilers and to make sure, yep, this is what we want. So they were very thorough about speccing the equipment that we specifically wanted. You know, there's a couple options, but both the top 2 options, the guys that's what they wanted. So they worked very well with making sure we got the equipment that met their needs and that we had somebody that could work on it.
Go ahead.
Just curious, what type of fuel do these new efficient boilers use?
They're all natural gas, just like we have.
And will there be asbestos removal with taking the old boilers out?
Yes, there is not a lot of asbestos. There is some in both boiler rooms. It is mostly pipe wrappings for that right now, because the district will pay for the asbestos removal because we'll run that under our health and safety dollars. So we have a couple other little projects that we're gonna have done at the same time. So our first estimate on the asbestos removal is about $15,000 total. So relatively small, not a lot left in the boiler rooms.
That was kind of my question. We're only a one fuel, because I know like at work, we can run natural gas, or on the demand, if we're low, gets really high, we can switch to a different fuel as
We're-
well. in winter.
We're dual fuel right now at the high school. And we're dropping that and going to just natural gas.
Will any of the boiler changing impact the ductwork in the existing buildings? Or do we-
Because there basically isn't ductwork, because it's all steam traps that
Okay.
come up from underneath.
I see, so it's just gonna be ductwork in the new facility because of lack of time.
Correct.
Yeah.
They'll all come in from the school. Similar to the early childhood center. Any other questions, or if you think of it, jot it down, you can ask me later. Other than that, like I said, my other items are all on the agenda, so I will be working on budget, getting things ready, looking at that, talking with the executive cabinet team, looking at staffing for next year, trying to get things in place. Very little revised budget changes yet to bring to you, so that's why I was holding off a little bit longer, because there's not anything real significant or alarming, so we'll wait with that for a little bit yet, and we'll get ready to bring the new budget to you.
Rich, you getting your questions answered on the
Oh, I'm
bids?
sorry, Rich, I was turned this way, not that way.
There's one thing we talked about before the meeting, so when we have an audience member, what's your name?
Tyler.
Tyler. Tyler's at about is this your third or fourth consecutive board meeting?
Probably fifth.
We're gonna give you an award here when you reach sixth. So do you have any questions on the bidding process at all?
I don't think so.
All right.
Rich, did you have something like
No,
this?
no, that's fine, I'm just here listening.
Okay, I'll learn.
All right. That's good. We'll move on.
Yeah, it's, you know, trying to keep these bid packages straight and when they're coming and when the bids need to be due, it's going. It's going. All right, thank you.
Moving on to Mr. Butler.
Thank you, and good evening. Last Wednesday, one of our teachers at our PLC meeting mentioned, you know, she said we've been to a lot of trainings, we've had a lot of discussions, you know, worked with difficulty in scheduling, and she said, now I see, after 2 years, we're talking about exclusively at the PLCs what kids are learning versus what they're doing. And that was very encouraging, and I said, thank you, and I want to share that. Because I think it really captures, after all that training, you know, what the essence of what we were learning 2 summers ago. Our PBIS cohort went to Mankato, and we worked on some planning for next year, worked on a theme, some more interventions for kids. This month's theme for March at both elementary sites is a spotlight on trustworthiness, and our all-school meetings at the end of the month will recognize kids for that. Our special education assessment team moved the final kids from the intervention process to the assessment phase on March 1st. That's when all plans needed to go out to parents, so they'll work the rest of the year and finish up those assessments by May 20th. Wanted to mention under curriculum, our MCA window will be 3/21 to 5/5. Also under curriculum, Joy and I are taking a team tomorrow to St. Cloud to learn more about Project Lead the Way at St. Cloud State University. I'm looking at the launch, which is K through 5, and then Gateway, which would be grade 6 at the elementary. Down near the bottom, we received our site award for Minnesota Reading Corps. We'll get one full-time tutor at Helen Baker, and that person will work with grades K through 2, and half-time at Lakeside, which works only with grade 3. And something that we learned later, our tutor at Helen Baker, Samara Williams, entered a poster contest. And you can see what she did with our K through 2 kids, and they were the statewide winner with the poster they put together, so I wanted to share that with you. I'll go to the back. You know, I want to recognize our elementary chess club. Through the Stevens Seminary Foundation, we're able to pay 3 parents, Shannon Matson, Corinne Schmieg, and Amanda Streufert, a modest stipend for leading that elementary chess club, and it's more popular this year than it has been in the previous 2 years we've run it. We had a kindergarten showcase on March 3rd where parents came to Ellen Baker and they went through a schedule with kids, and they went with kids to Phi Ed, to art, and to music, and of course we had a huge turnout for that. PTO, I want to acknowledge them as well. You see the names on the bottom, and we've got Emily Schilling, Mandy Conklin, Deb Shiro, Christy Scheid, Corinne Schmieg, and the teachers Kim Borka and Tammy Sherman. I want to give them a lot of credit for we actually have a real PTO at the elementary. We did a movie night on March 4th. We had upwards of 100 kids attend, and I should acknowledge Mike too. Thank you for the technology piece. It's always reassuring when you walk in and get us going with that, so thank you. They also provided some meals for teachers during elementary conferences at both elementary sites. And finally, I'll conclude with, we have kindergarten roundup on Thursday, on St. Patrick's Day, and based on our mailing of 150 some envelopes, I expect a class of 105 to 110, which is pretty consistent now with what we've had for 3-4 years. That's all I've got. What questions do you have?
Bill, just in terms of the standardized tests here, can you give us an update on where things go? Like this, I understand this is last year, the OPA. Is that right? Is that how you pronounce this now? So that goes away. And so MCA, is that all we're doing now from standardized testing, or is there others that will be done?
Well, you know, that will be the only high stakes test. You know, a lot of what we do is standardized, and we use it for our own internal data so that teachers can respond to that testing. But we talked this morning at Cabinet. There's a tool that we're going to be renewing. It's called Formative Assessment System for Teachers, and that'll give us similar type data that people did and does up to this year.
We'll do NWEA measures of academic progress, MAP testing as well, but for internal needs, like you said, versus high stakes.
Jamie, we don't. We've transitioned to FAST and are using that tool for that information. And they do continue to modify that, and looking for more, telling us more enhancements for the following year, especially in math.
Okay. What grade levels and how many times a year does that happen?
So it's available grades K through 10, and we're going to relicense through 10th grade for about 1,300 students. And we do benchmarking 3 times a year, progress monitoring, weekly on some kids, every other week on other kids who are in the title program, for example. Is that?
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Sanju.
Thank you. I'm sure you guys get this information, but I also have here, if you're interested from a board standpoint, about the MSBA, I think level or phase 3 and 4 training. But when I get these, I just want to make sure that I pass that on to you. You guys might be getting those in the mail as well. Having our next community schools meeting on the 18th, which everyone here is invited to attend. We're going to have an update on a school update that we try to do, but then the Parley Pro group that sometimes performs here will be doing that on Friday. We've also got our next district advisory group meeting scheduled for next Monday at 6 o'clock. We're going to meet for an hour so that we can get over to the concert. I know that the other principals have talked a little bit about the STEM initiative. We've been basically talking a little bit about that every week for the last several weeks at our cabinet meetings and our executive cabinet meetings, talking a little bit about how that implementation is going to look. Just to speak a little bit more about that, once we know a little bit more with the board, potential board meeting, we'd also like that we talked a little bit about, but trying to combine that potentially would be a good thing because they're both going to be basically happening at the same time. So I don't have a specific date about that. And in that work session, one of the things that we can talk a little bit about is somewhat of the school plan and some of the visions of some of the additions that we are going to be looking at trying to put into play with that related to the STEM and how to initiate that STEM stuff. And so we'll get you that information on that particular date on what when that's coming, but sometime probably at the end of March. Okay, and we'll try to work out with your schedules as best that we can. So more than likely an evening meeting, even though our second one is usually morning to try to approve things. But if we need to start it with a board meeting and then finish it a little bit with a work session, that would be a nice way to do that so that we can combine those two ideas. One of the things that we got back from MDE here recently was our graduation rates. Those were released, and one of the things that I'm very proudly to report over the last 5 years, GSL has had a 97.12% graduation rate, which I think is just phenomenal and excellent, and certainly something to brag about. I want to say thank you to the many staff members that helped with the Glencoe Expo. We had a booth, or actually a double booth, that really showcased all the many things that we're doing here at GSL. The newsletter is going to be coming out, Don, when a couple days?
It was mailed on Thursday.
So it might even be in the hands of people already. Special thank you to Don once again. If you page through that newsletter, you're going to find lots of really great data, great stories, great information for things, and I really hope that people take the time to look at it because it is an awesome showcase of what we're doing. We talked a little bit about the building project. There's a lot that's going on, and obviously we are very excited to start seeing some things. One of the things that we want to have happen with the information from our construction manager is to kind of tell us a little bit about when and where we have to start rerouting the kids, because obviously this whole area is going to be safety and being able to educate those, and they said that they're going to get that information to us as soon as possible, because we want to use like the link as long as we possibly can, but at some point in time that link is going to have to come down, and so we're working with that, making sure that our safety is a high priority. They have told us that we'll be able to have our buses be right out in front and be able to keep things status quo in terms of that procedure. But obviously there's going to be something that's going to be right here from this corner all the way over to the high school corner. That's going to be a safety procedure, and that's going to narrow things up a little bit for the kids. But we're just going to need to make sure when that date is and start educating our families on that. So we've got that ready to go. My work with McLeod for Tomorrow is still continuing. Right now we're in a skate drive, so if anybody has any ice skates or hockey skates, kids from all over the high school are collecting those, and we're going to be able to give that to McLeod County for their Winterfest Day. And then we're also still working with the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon group out of McLeod County with our students, expanding their resource list. And then we're also preparing for the Leadership Day that's going to be happening here at the end of April. Another couple of dates that we would like you to put on your calendar. We have Celebration Day. This is an initiative that I came up with last year that I think was very successful, where we bring all of our kids together and want to invite you guys to come to that. It's going to be in the morning, where we're going to basically celebrate the successes of our students. That's going to be on May 13th, starting basically right away at the school day, right around 8:30. And then of course we're getting very, very close to just a couple months away. We'll be having graduation, and graduation, just to put on your calendars, is May 20th. Other than that, any questions?
Are we going to have a groundbreaking?
We are going to have that, and once we know a specific date, we will get that to you, because we would love to have all of you present, if at all possible, when that is. And so we'll work around your schedule when that day will happen, but the answer to that is yes, we want to do that. We just don't know, like, when. We can officially take shovels and then the next day we'll have all these big tractors around. So we'll get that organized too, but it's coming very, very soon. We know that. I mean, it's gonna be, they're gonna be doing some groundwork here very, very quickly. Exciting time.
Is there any board committee reports? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on to motion to approve the agenda. Please note there is an addendum to the agenda, which will be the window and door bids here.
So moved.
Motion by Jamie, do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ann to approve the agenda with the noted addendum. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item to approve consent agenda. Please note there's addendum to that as well. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move.
Motion by Jason, need a second?
So moved.
Seconded by Kevin to approve the consent agenda with the noted addendum items. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. There's no old business this time, so move on to new business. Item A is a third trimester overload. Principal Sparby requests approval of a third trimester overload in order to divide the high school developmental adaptive physical education class into two sections. The wide range of abilities is the reason for this. David Frazier is the teacher and the cost would be $1,967. Superintendent Sanju recommends approval of this request. Do we have a motion?
I so moved.
Motion by Ann, need a second.
I'll second.
Seconded by Kevin to approve the third trimester overload for David Frazier in order to divide the high school Dave class into two sections. Discussion?
And just so you know that this will be something that will be an overload next school year as well. Just because the same class basically stays the same, and they want to keep it into two. We know that, and it's planned for that.
So will we approve it next year again?
We will approve it again, but it will be in September when we do the overload. So
Okay, we have a motion by Ann, seconded by Kevin. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item B, grounds agreement with 4.0 Services. Business Manager Sander has met with Mike Hennick from 4.0 Services to renew a new 2-year grounds maintenance service agreement. The agreement will be from April 1, 2016 through November 15, 2016, and April 1, 2017 through November 15, 2017. The agreement also includes the coordination of the fertilizing and weed control maintenance. Cost for the grounds agreement is $75,990 for the 2016 season and $76,750 for the 2017 season. This represents a 1% increase over the 2015 season. The fertilizing/weed control costs are $5,302 for both years. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Jamie, need a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jason to approve the agreement. Management services and fertilizing/weed control of the approximately 42 acres of the GSL School District's grounds from April 1, 2016 through November 15, 2017. Discussion.
Just a few comments that I'll give to you. The meeting went very well with Mike. I was just looking, we started this agreement with them in 2010. So already it's our sixth season with them, and they've just been really, really good to work with. And I think when we started this 6 years ago, I think we kind of remember where we were at and what we were struggling with. So we've made a lot of improvements in our grounds in that area and just staying on top of some of those things. Just one correction. The one thing we did adjust is we went from 42 acres to 38 acres. In our discussion, we talked about the construction and the fact that, granted, between these two buildings was mostly all tennis courts, but some mowing that will no longer, they don't need to take care of. But then also just north of the complex out here, where that's all going to become new playground, we don't anticipate there's going to be much mowing back there because a lot of that earthwork is going to be happening ditch and all that kind of stuff. So that'll pretty much be fenced off, part of the construction. So we agreed that we would reduce the acres. So we were at 42, and if you remember 2 years ago, behind our football stadium, when we added the soccer fields, we added acres, and now we're taking acres away. So our agreement right now is for 38 acres that they will be managing. And then we did talk about in 2 years from now, when the construction is done, and what happens at Helen Baker. So we've kind of already had those discussions about, you know, we have another reduction in acres if, at the time when and if we sell that property and then we no longer maintain that. So we're already having that discussion. So our new contract with the 1%, which is just, I recommend a really nice, you know, it's a nice low increase. So we're paying actually less than we were last year because of the decrease in acres. Last year our contract amount was $77,238. So we've actually got a decrease in that grounds of contract. So I had kind of covered everything with Jason and Jamie. I don't know if they had any other concerns from their standpoint, but I think we're good to go on it.
Jamie, do you want to amend that and make this 38 acres rather than 42? Is that what you just
Yes,
said?
38 acres is the new agreement, and I apologize, I didn't catch that in the motion earlier.
Yes, I will make that change. 42 acres to 38 acres.
I'll second it.
Okay, thanks Jamie, thanks Jason. So the price actually went down.
Correct.
Yep, so we're paying less. And on the weed control part, they don't apply the fertilizer weed control, they kind of subcontract through another company, but they do all the coordination of that. That's why we include it on the contract, because they're actually overseeing it, but they don't actually, you know, their grounds guys don't have the license to apply those chemicals, so they work with somebody else.
Okay, we have a motion by Jamie, seconded by Jason. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item C, agricultural land lease. Business manager Sander has prepared a 2-year lease of the 44.2 acres of agricultural land located north of the high school. The lease for 2016 and 2017 will remain at $130 per acre and will generate $5,746 each year. Superintendent Sanju recommends approval of the agricultural land lease. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Kevin, need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Ann to lease the 44.2 acres of agricultural land located north of the high school for 2 years at $130 per acre in 2016 and 2017 for a total of $5,746 each year. Discussion?
Little information on this one. Met with Chad Stewie. He's a great renter to have. He's just a nice, pleasant young man that works so well with us as a district and works with our FFA department so well. The lease has always been for the 44.2 acres, and that's the number of acres that we leave in the lease. What we do at the end of the season, whatever FFA has used, we kind of adjust that. So sometimes it's a half acre, sometimes it's an acre, depending on the last couple of years, what they've been able to plant and not plant. And he takes care of getting that tilled up for the FFA department, and when we ask him to stay away from the fence a little bit, he stays away for our cross-country path, so he's just works with us very well. We have had a lot of discussion of the drain tile that's out on that property, which is kind of another whole story that we won't get into, but that drain tile out there that we have on that acres is currently not working. We're unsure if that drain tile has been cracked, if it's been intentionally broken, not usable. So we're looking at the possibility of eventually preparing that tile and also working with all the farmers that are down the road accessing that same tile, and they would all like to see it fixed, and they also have, they would like to cover a lot of that cost. So the main reason we kind of visited with Jason and Jamie again on this, instead of increasing that dollar amount right now because of the quality of the land, the possibility of if we do some tiling out there, if we fix the tiling, if we improve the land, that quality, at that time we might have a discussion about increasing that a little bit. At this point, We just kind of wanted to leave it status quo. We're collecting enough rent money that covers our taxes out there. Taxes did go up there because of our building project. Before that was not taxed, the referendum piece, because ag land is not taxed with referendum, but building project it is. So we saw the impact of that as well, just like, you know, the majority of the farmers. But we do cover enough that it's still covering our taxes, and I'm recommending that we continue that same lease agreement.
So just had a question now. So Ann and I went to this meeting that was more information only here on the water drainage, and one of those things that they felt strongly on was running that tile line. So the Buffalo Creek Watershed meets here next Tuesday to really give the city of Glencoe a final, either yes, they accept that plan, or no, and we're a small part of that. Michelle has talked about that, yeah,
Well,
it still
part
is
of it's
part
the
of the
same
city
line.
of Glencoe plan with that line. Now, who pays for that and those kind of things, that's really not yet been discussed, but once again, is it part of our building project, or is it not part of our building project, and it's on our property, so I would assume we would be probably in charge of that, even though it's part of the city of Glencoe plan. So hopefully after a week from tomorrow, there's better clarification as to what the Buffalo Creek watershed will allow the city of Glencoe to do. And how does that tie in with our building project? Well, I mean, it's part of it, even though we're a separate part of that.
we've had lots and lots and lots of meetings, discussions, and lots with engineers and more engineers. At this point, just to summarize it quickly, Buffalo Creek Watershed approved the school's permit so that the water that drains from our facility will go into the school's pond, just right north here. So that's done, over with. So the other piece of that, the city's project needs a permit from Buffalo Creek Watershed, and that's where their plan ties in the line that's on the school property. And so part of their new, evaluation and discussion, they're looking at that tile line that's out in our ag land. And if that can be reconnected, fixed, that would drain our wetland, which the pond drains into, and it goes on from there. But so, kind of two separate things, but for our projects, it's gonna drain into our pond, and then the city portion is another kind of whole separate piece of it, but we're tied into that, so it kind of all gets intermingled, but our project, we're good to go.
Isn't the hang-up kind of with the city and Buffalo Creek watershed really the size of the tile that is going underneath the railroad track? Isn't it mainly that part that is kind of the discussion, the debate going on, besides our tile and what we would do? Doesn't that part have to kind of get figured out maybe first as far as the size?
Part of their issue is the size of the tile. For us, it doesn't have to get figured out.
Right.
We're good.
Yeah.
The other big part is, it actually comes down to whose water it is and whose water can flow into that ditch that belongs to the ditch owners. And they have to give permission of whose water can flow into that. So that's kind of another whole piece of it between the farmers and Buffalo Creek watershed and the city. So there's a lot of different players and how that water all flows to that ditch and, under the railroad.
Well, I think they're,
It's a private ditch owned by the farmers, yeah. We're part of that. We don't have a problem if our water is considered technically an owner also of that ditch.
but they also are concerned how much holding capacity do we have here, and that's where if they lower that existing pond by, I don't know, is it a foot or is it 2 feet? We would have 40 acres of water capacity, which I think Buffalo Creek Watershed likes that because then that's less water downstream. So that's another part of it, that they are not only interested in how big that tile line is, but how quickly that water gets into the ditch.
And there's a lot, concerns that by increasing that drain tile, how fast it's getting into Buffalo Creek, and what's the ramifications downstream and upstream, because it's gonna affect everybody. So it's all kind of sitting with Buffalo Creek right now, and we've had, our engineers, the city engineers, the Buffalo Creek watershed engineers. There's been a lot of, like you said, a lot of engineers, a lot of meetings, but hopefully, that they get it all sorted through and working. And we're doing the best we can to work and be part of the whole solution, so.
Well, I think we owe a thank you to each of those entities for obviously including the district in the discussions, and we needed to be a player at the table, we needed to be part of that discussion. But I think also thanking those entities for realizing that our project moving forward was on a definite timeline, different than their timeline, so that they did not, in their discussions, hold up our project. So I think we kind of owe some thank you to those entities for keeping that in mind too, so that did not delay anything on our part.
However, we still need the city of Glencoe to give us a permit, so that's still a part of it, but hopefully next Tuesday that moves forward. So I think anyone's welcome at that meeting. It's at 1 o'clock next Tuesday at the city center, where the Buffalo Creek will look at that city's, Glencoe's project and either approve or disapprove at that time.
With all the filter strips and buffer strips along waterways, just making it or putting a bigger tile, how does that affect? I mean, you've got all the water states running off from the city, and I know that the governor right now has something in about buffer strips along every waterway, whether it's a slough or that, but if we're just gonna run it straight through, do they not take that into account, or?
We're okay because ours isn't running into a ditch, but that is a new law. With the ditch, I think the feet right now is a 16-foot buffer strip that they have to have along the ditches. So that was another part of the discussion for Buffalo Creek Watershed and the farmers that were at the meeting that I was at. And they wanted to make sure that they didn't have to increase that buffer strip to accommodate the additional water.
I believe the governor's proposal, I believe, is to 24 or 25 feet is what he said. I mean, it's not a law yet. Right now, it's 16 and a half feet or whatnot.
I thought I read that got tabled till next year. The committee and stuff. But his proposal.
'Cause I know Buffalo Creek, that the last meeting I was at, that was at 16.
Yeah, we have a motion by Kevin and it was seconded by Ann. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item D, Southwest West Central Service Cooperative Agreements for 2016-2017. The Glencoe Silver Lake School District utilizes several services provided by the Southwest West Central Service Cooperative. The following services are recommended by the administration. The Service Cooperative membership dues. I'm not going to read all of those numbers there. You can look at those as to where they were this year and where they are next year. The Health and Safety Management Assistance contract, the Regional Management Information Center contract, Basic Technology Services, and Special Education Services contract, which includes Behavior Services Option B. The Senator will provide further information about these contracts at this time. And it's driven by enrollment in some capacity. Is that why we have those child count numbers listed there?
Yeah, that's correct. They take the October 1st child count from the previous year. Not gonna, spend a lot of time unless you have specific questions. We've been doing these contracts for years and years and years, so no big changes that we have from what we've done in the last couple of years, looking to 16-17. The reason we do these now, which may seem a little early to you, but if you have any changes that you want to make as an individual district to this contract, it could affect staffing. So the co-op needs to know that if you're decreasing services or days or hours, especially on, the special ed, if they have to adjust staffing on their end, they have ample time to meet contract requirements. So that's why you see them always now, it's kind of early in March. But we're not looking at any changes. Basically, the dues is just our membership agreement with them so we can take advantage of being part of the cooperative. Health and safety management assistance is just their assistance helping us with some health and safety issues. They have a person that comes out twice a year that does mock OSHA walkthroughs. And not the real OSHA, which we didn't talk about. We'll come back to that one, but they offer any type of assistance. If you have questions, is this a health and safety thing? If you have trouble with reporting, they're available for that assistance. The RMIC contract is basically our finance system, our payroll system, and our MARS student system. So they offer all the software for those systems and all the support for those systems. Huge component of that agreement with the cooperative. It'd be hard to survive without the support that we get with our finance and payroll and student system, and making sure that is all submitted correctly to the right agencies. Basic technology service, because we have such tremendous technology staff in-house. Mike's not listening. We can do a lot of the networking and some of those things that smaller districts maybe not have the capability, so you can kind of choose the level of technology services you want. We go with a very basic service that just allows us some support, also discounts on things we may buy, discounts on workshops, those type of things. So we just have the real basic package. And then the special education services basically includes for us our coordinator position, some OT time, some of our preschool coordinator services, our visually impaired services, and our social worker services. Those are the big areas that we get as part of our contracts. And then we do get that behavior services, a little bit of behavior analysis that we have, about 40 hours that they offer of services, consultant work to come out and help the principals with certain students' concerns, student identification and behavioral needs.
Because there's some special ed services and things involved with this overall contract, do we get any type of reimbursement or federal dollars for this?
How it works is our federal dollars flow through the service cooperative. So whatever we're allotted as a district flows through that agency, and then they disperse those funds. Our contracts then come off the top of so if we get $500,000 in federal ed aid, our special ed services all come off of what our allotment is, and then we get what's left to use to meet our local needs, whether it's staffing, supplies, equipment, room remodel. We're going to use some for our new special ed van purchase, those type of things. So yes, those are all covered through our special ed federal funding.
Do we have a motion?
I so moved.
Motion by Andy, a second.
Second.
Second by Jamie. To contract with Southwest West Central Service Cooperative for the services as listed above for the 2016-2017 school year. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item E, second reading of policies. The following policies received their first reading at the February 8th board meeting. It is the recommendation of the policy committee consisting of directors Von Berg and Twist of these policies. I read through those policies the first time in February, so I'll read them again. We have motion.
I so moved.
Motion by Andy, a second. Seconded by Jason to adopt the policies listed above. Discussion?
Was there any other discussion about selling things out of lockers and stuff? And I don't know necessarily if that it would go with 724, but just any other discussion at the policy committee about either having an insert into that policy or a policy of its own, since there isn't one currently, or has there not been a
There
meeting?
hasn't been any further discussion that we didn't need tonight, so.
Okay.
Think of,
Tell us.
what did I tell you?
Well, you said that there was an administrative, like, little line at the beginning that kind of said.
And then also our vending machine policy kind of help cover that as well, is that the policy that I sent out?
I think Jane was just referring to if kids bring,
Right, but I think our vending machine policy can kind of cover that because that specifically tells us what we can sell. And so if it's not listed in a school kid's locker, they can't do it. It kind of, you know what I'm saying? Because of our policy that deals with vending machines, that you could use if you needed to say, no, you can't do that.
I think the rest then was kind of covered in the handbook,
And covered in the handbook.
administrative.
Because the vending machine kind of outlines what we can sell. If that's not covered, then a kid can't.
I had a question about the violence one. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen in the paper the last few weeks where there've been teachers in St. Paul that have been beat up by students, different school districts. And I have no clue as to how we would work that in, but does this policy cover that?
Well, yes.
It does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I think our crisis plan, if
Yeah,
it's
crisis
true
plan.
violence one, that it's mandated in healthcare now, that all healthcare facilities have a violence in the workplace policy there, but that really is more of a, if you would have those casualties, multiple casualty type thing. I don't know that crisis plan by memory here, but there is some of that of how do you respond in that situation in terms of chain of command.
But isn't your question more along the lines not of how it's handled, but the consequences for?
All right, the consequences for, I mean,
I don't know off the top of my head, but
okay, I,
we can look into that.
So in terms of consequences, you're saying if a student or a staff member or a member of the general public?
well, like I said, St. Paul, I believe the teachers almost made it they weren't going to do a contract because they wanted more protection because, I mean, the guy that was slammed into the wall, the two students while the rest of the class was watching and some of them were videotaping and so that's, I'm just, like I said, I have no idea how it would be in this policy or where it would be, but what,
Dawn, I think that would be under our policy on student discipline rather than this one, but I could be mistaken.
Although this one talks about the purpose of the policies to recognize that violence is increased and to identify measures that the school district will take in an attempt to maintain a learning and working environment that is free from violent and destructive behavior. And then it goes on to list all sorts of different measures and prevention strategies. And it gives specific information for supporting students and supporting personnel. So I would think that this does cover
it
that.
does, okay.
I think there are a lot of policies that do probably the same thing, like Bill was saying, that discipline is involved. I think our Old Bayes program has some tie into this, and
Prevention
Yeah,
yeah,
aspect.
with the prevention.
Okay, that's,
And it's covering not only staff, but public as well, since part of our facility, the field house is public as well, that the public is obviously protected and safe just as our staff is too. This is something that we need to make sure is worded correctly within our policies also. That we have to remember that part of our facility is, I want to say, always open to the public, meaning the field house.
The field house also has their own membership with some waivers
in
Okay.
here. I couldn't tell you exactly what the waivers are, but some of that is covered with your membership agreement.
Okay.
So what we're saying is there could be multiple policies that would be affecting that.
If some sort of violent act happens is what you're,
Yep.
yeah, I mean,
All right. And then does the crisis plan kind of lay out the order in which the policies trump one another?
I don't think so, no.
It depends on the situation and if it's more student discipline versus violent employees, but it's gonna be situation based. I think that-
Crisis plan gives you kind of a map of what to do
Yeah.
in certain situations, but, you know, if there's something, a violent situation that happens, a lot of variables are affected on there, but we certainly have the right to discipline the way we see fit.
Okay, we have a motion by
And then seconded by Jason. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item F, first reading of policies. It is a recommendation of the policy committee to bring back the following policies for adoption at the next school board meeting. Policy 416, drug and alcohol testing. Policy 616, school district system accountability. Policy 801, equal access to school facilities. Policy 802, disposition of obsolete equipment and material. Policy 805, waste reduction and recycling. Policy 806, crisis management policy. Policy 901, community education. Policy 902, use of school district facilities and equipment. Policy 903, visitors to school district buildings and sites. Policy 904, distribution of materials on school district property by non-school persons. Policy 905, advertising. Policy 906, community notification of predatory offenders. Policy 907, rewards. Policy 907.1, latex balloon / latex glove, prohibition. We have a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Ann, need a second?
Al, second.
Seconded by Kevin to bring back the policies listed above for adoption at the next school board meeting. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item G, resolution to accept donations. This is a recommendation of Superintendent Sanju to adopt the resolution to accept donations. Do we have a motion?
So,
Motion by Jamie, need a second.
second.
Seconded by Kevin to adopt the resolution to accept donations. Discussion?
Huge thank you to each of the companies, corporations, individuals, groups, associations, and so forth for their generous donations toward wonderful opportunities for our students here at GSL. Thank you very much.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to miscellaneous. Do we have any miscellaneous?
Well, just mention,
Oops, I'm sorry. I'm going to go to addendum, thank you. To the addendum, which is item H, window / door bids. School district received bids on Thursday, March 10th for the windows. There were 4 bids received. Because of the incomplete documentation on the 2 low bids and the substantially higher cost on the next bid, Superintendent Sanju and Business Manager Sander, along with architects Rigo and Youngquist Incorporated, recommend the board reject all bids and rebid the project. The project would be rebid according to the original specifications with the exception of changing the completion date from August 1 to August 15, 2016. We have a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Jamie. We have a second.
Second.
Seconded by Kevin to bid the window / door project at Lakeside Emma High School and authorize Superintendent Sanju, Business Manager Sander, and architects Rigo and Youngquist Incorporated to award the window rebids on March 31st. The day the bids are due, after completing the bid validation in order to ensure product delivery time for the completion date of August 15, 2016. Discussion.
Okay, so I see if I can confuse you or not. Nope. All right. We bid the window door projects, and like Clark read, the bids were due last Thursday, March 10th. When we passed the building bond, part of the building bond question included dollars specifically designated towards finishing the windows at the Silver Lake building at Lakeside Elementary. We've been starting working on some of those windows, but we haven't gotten more money designated for that project. So that was part of the bid bond. So as we were looking at this, meeting with Jason about facility plans and operations, one thing we decided to do with new windows on Lincoln, brand new construction, we decided it was time that we needed to do the high school windows, which has been on our list, but just didn't move up to the priority until now. But their original windows, they need to be replaced. So instead of bidding the high school as a separate project, we said in meeting with the architects, it would be to our advantage to put it all together into one bid. So that's what we did. It was a combined bid of Lakeside and the high school. And then as we're talking, we had said, well, instead of just bidding the windows at the high school, let's get those doors replaced at the same time. So we'll have a complete new envelope around that, the current high school building. So we added in the new curtain wall in the front of the high school and 3 doors, double doors on the east side of the high school. So you send out the bids. The bids came back, and part of the bid requirements is the contractor has to give you a base bid. They have to provide a bid bond. They have to acknowledge the alternate 1, which accounts for liquidated damages. They also have to provide a contractor certification, which was a new law that was put in place last year. They have to acknowledge the addendum, and then they have to give you their start and end dates, their completion dates. So the bids came in, we opened them up. The lowest bidder did not comply with all the requirements in the specifications. They did not provide the contractor certification, the addendum acknowledgement, and they could not meet our completion date. We then looked at the second lowest bidder. They met all the requirements, including the completion date, but they forgot to include their contractor certification. So we had a total of 4 bidders that were here, well, 5 bidders that were here, 4 that submitted bids. The 5th bidder, last minute, didn't get his phone call, couldn't provide us a bid. So there were actually 5 very interested, which was encouraging for us that we had 5 bidders that wanted to do our project. So then we kept going up the ladder. So the next bid met all the requirements of the bid specifications, but he was $60,000 higher. The last bidder then higher yet, but forgot to acknowledge the addendum. So, except for 1, everybody else had incomplete bids. Because of the higher cost, the $60,000, I don't think it's financially, being fiscally financial to spend an additional $60,000. So in discussion with, you got the information that we sent out, discussing it with the architect, re-looking at it, decided our best option is to reject all bids, turn around and immediately rebid it. Now, we're not rebidding it for the reason that it's over budget. Technically, in our budget for the building project, we had $260,000 that was designated for Lakeside, which this includes that. The other part of it, we're paying for as a district, we're paying for all of it, but using our operating capital funds to pay for the high school windows. That is not part of the bond, that's not part of technically part of the building project. So there was no budget, we needed to bid it and see where it came in. So we're not rejecting it because it's over budget. We're rejecting it based on did not meet bid specifications, and the next highest bidder was too much higher. So I just want to be clear that it's not being rejected because of over budget. It's rejected because of not meeting the bid specs and then the higher cost versus the 2. So we would like to rebid it. We've got the ads ready to go for the paper. We have to legally advertise twice in our local paper, and then you cannot accept the bids until 7 days after the last time it was advertised. So we would have the bids due on March 31st, and then what we're asking for is because of the quick turnaround that we need, we would like authority given to Mr. Sanju, myself, and ARY after we validate the bids. If it looks good to go, immediately get that bid approved and then bring it back to you as a board at the April board meeting, and we have you a little bit retroactively. But that way we can tell the contractor, yes, get those windows ordered so we can have it in time. By delaying this 2 weeks, we're going to have to change the bid spec to, have the completion date at August 15th. We originally had the completion date we wanted as August 1st. so we could be done, have them out of here. We know there's still always some construction things going on, but to have them as complete as we can before school starts. So we might have a little bit of, interruption into some classrooms if things aren't quite done, by the time school starts because of, the delay now in getting the project going. So that's kind of the gist of it. Questions?
So any of these people who have bid before can bid again and they
Absolutely.
include the things they left out.
Yep. And the architects already has contacted all 5 of the bidders that either presented a bid or were interested, and they will do now an addendum giving them, the same bid specs with the exception of the completion date. We still would like a starting date if we can of May 21st is what we have as a starting date. If they can't get their product in time, can they start on some things until their product gets here? But, the start might get delayed a little bit too. But yeah, all the same bidders can bid, and it's kind of like the cards are all on the table. They've all seen the bids now, so it'll be interesting to see what that does to, if anybody wants to adjust their price from what they've seen.
It's in our favor.
Okay, we have motion by Jamie, second by Kevin. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Miscellaneous?
I was just gonna give a quick little update. We're still, actually met with a couple of groups for Helen Baker. Obviously that sale is still there, nothing finite or anything like that, but there was a couple of groups out there that had some interest and we gave them the information that they had, and we'll just kind of keep waiting and seeing what happens there. And then as Michelle alluded to earlier, we actually had an OSHA inspection at GSL, the official guys. I've never seen it or had it ever happen to me in my career of education. But they came walking in and they did the stuff and they said that we did really, really, really well. Now, we haven't seen any reports or anything like that, but all indications were that they did not go to Helen Baker, but they looked at our logs and they said, "Thank you very much, looks great," and they turned them right back to us. And so,
They did Lincoln and the high school.
correct. Yep. And they basically said that that's the ones that they stick with because of that's where you see most of the hazardous stuff. You don't necessarily see all that at the elementary schools, and so they said these are the 2 facilities that we want to see, and they went and saw the places that they wanted to see and thanked us very much for our cooperation and said we did a great job, and we'll see what happens and we'll keep you posted on it. But just like Michelle, you always hear about it, and we've always told our staff these are things that you have to do. You never know when OSHA will be here. And all of a sudden one morning I got Lori came walking down the hall and said, "OSHA's here." Oh. And just listened to what they had to say, and we got them everything they needed.
And you said Lakeside wasn't part of it mainly because they're in elementary, but
That's
still,
what they said.
But I'm sure the log still had information about
Yep.
Lakeside in it
Yep.
anyway.
They chose not to go up there.
Yeah.
It wasn't our choice. It was, so.
Well, the nice thing is if they're gonna fine you, they give you that fine right away. Send you scud by on that one.
Well, that's a good indicator then, because they thanked us and said, "Have a great day." So we'll see. But
We left them in Brady's hands, so that.
Right. Wait.
Well,
Yep.
that's
a fine itself.
that was exactly. So anyhow, that's all I have for tonight. So thanks.
Right, do we have motion to adjourn?
So moved.
By Jamie, need a second?
Sorry.
Second by Jason to adjourn at 8:33 p.m. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
All right.